Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Viewers, this is the 12th and final episode of the 17th topic. We have been discussing the revelation of the Quran on Seven Ahruf. We have discussed and analyzed the content and the text of the narratives, and we have been discussing the chains of narration of the narrative. We have completed, in fact, discussion on these chains of narration, which include both marfu and mawquf narratives. Today, in this final episode, we shall end this topic on two discussions which may be considered as two appendices, basically. The first of them would relate to the Shiite view on the Seven Ahruf, and the second would relate to some of the secondary interpretations of the Seven Ahruf narrative. In the main series, we had discussed seven major and seven primary interpretations of the Seven Ahruf narrative. However, since we had already alluded to the fact that there are almost 35 to 40 interpretations of this narrative, so we shall take a brief look at some of these secondary interpretations, and although we'll not critically view them, because on even first glance, on first reading, we can clearly see that they cannot be regarded as tenable. First, we'll discuss the Shiite view on the Seven Ahruf narratives. In this regard, there are three primary and three representative texts that we have to consider. The first one is by Imam Abu Abdullah, Imam Baqir, and Imam Abu Jafar Baqir, and the text has been taken from Basair al-Darajat of As-Saffar, and you can see its text in translation being displayed before you. It says, "An Abi Jafar alayhi salam qala tafsir al-Quran ala sabati ahruf minhu ma kana wa minhu ma lam yakun ba'da zalik ta'rifuhu al-a'imma." Abu Jafar said, the tafsir of the Quran is on seven aspects, some of them which are before the people and some which are not known later as well. They are only known to the Imams. So this is the first version, the first primary text in this regard. The second one is by Imam Abu Abdullah Jafar al-Sadiq, and this has been taken from Sheikh Ibn Babwel Kummi's Al-Khisal, a famous book that has been authored by him. The text reads, عن حماد بن عثمان قال قلت لأبي عبد الله إن الأحاديث تختلف عنكم فقال إن القرآن نزل على سبعة أحرف وأدنى ما للإمام أن يفتي على سبعة وجوه ثم قال هذا عطاؤنا فمن أو أمسك بغير حساب. Hamad ibn Usman said, I said to Abu Abdullah Jafar al-Sadiq, narratives vary from you, which means narrative vary from you Imams. He replied, indeed the Quran has been revealed on seven ahruf. The least is that an Imam gives verdict on seven aspects. He then said, referring to verses 39 and 40 of Surah 38, this is what we have blessed you with in great numbers. Haza ata'una famnun aw amsik bighairi hisab is actually a Quranic verse. So expend it as a favor or withhold it. Obviously, this verse is taken to mean what he is implying here. The third narrative in this regard, viewers, is reported by the forefathers of Abdullah al-Hashimi. They have not been named, but the words are عن أحمد بن حلال عن عيسى بن عبد الله الحاشمي عن أبيه عن آبائه عليهم السلام قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عليه وآله أتاني آت من الله فقال إن الله عز وجل يأمرك أن تقرأ القرآن على حرف واحد فقلت يا رب وسع على أمتي فقال إن الله عز وجل يأمرك أن تقرأ القرآن على حرف واحد فقلت يا رب وسع على أمتي فقال إن الله عز وجل يأمرك أن تقرأ القرآن على حرف واحد فقلت يا رب وسع على أمتي فقال إن الله يأمرك أن تقرأ القرآن على سبعة أحرف. So Isa ibn Abdullah al-Hashmi reports from his father, who reports from his ancestors. The Messenger of God said, one who comes came to me from God and said, indeed, God Almighty has ordered you to read the Quran on one harf. So I said, O Lord, please be accommodating to my ummah. The angel then said, indeed, God Almighty has ordered you to read the Quran on one harf. So I said, O Lord, please be accommodating to my ummah. Then the angel said, indeed, God Almighty has ordered you to read the Quran on seven ahruf. And this text has also been taken by Sheikh al-Saduq al-Khisal. So these are the three primary narratives which can be attributed to the view of the Shiite authorities in this regard. Now, as far as the analysis of this text is concerned, while explaining the first two of them, the first two narratives, Faiz al-Kashani and Reza al-Hamadani, and Faiz al-Kashani in his Tafsir al-Safi and Reza al-Hamadani in his Misbah al-Faqih, they say that these narratives clearly show that they refer not to the revelation of the Quran on seven ahruf, but to the fact that there can be different meanings and interpretations of a verse. So they are actually referring to different types of verses. And they say that this view of his this view is substantiated by the following narratives found in the Sunni tradition. And we have already discussed those narratives, and he has also actually referred to them as Nazal al-Quran ala sabati ahruf, amrun wa zajrun wa targhibun wa tarhibun wa jadalun wa qasasun wa masalun, which means that the Quran has been revealed on seven ahruf, and then actually, according to them, it actually refers to seven types of Quranic verses, that would be verses of injunction, of warning, of exhortation, of threat, of arguments, of parables, and of anecdotes. And another example he gives is Zajrun wa amrun wa halalun wa haramun wa muhkamun wa mutashabihun wa amsal, which means verses of warnings, injunctions, the allowed, the prohibited, the muhkam, the mutashabih, and the parables. Al-Kashani and Al-Hamadani go on to say that these narratives are themselves corroborated. They are themselves corroborated by what Ali has said thus, and then they quote him: Inna Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala unzil al-Quran ala sabati aqsam kullu qismin minha kafin shafin wa hiya amrun wa zajrun wa targhibun wa tarhibun wa jadalun wa masalun wa qasasun. The Almighty has revealed the Quran on seven types, and each type is enough and sufficient. And then again, they go on to enumerate, in fact, these types, and they are verses of injunctions, of warning, of exhortation, of threat, of arguments, of parables, and of anecdotes. Now, Mir Muhammad Zarindani, in his Buhus fi Tarikh al-Quran wa Ulumuhu, has said that these meanings can go up to seven, and if the word seven is taken figuratively, it will mean that there can be many interpretations. So actually, this is how these people interpret the first two narratives. Al-Majlisi, in his Biharul Anwar, and Muhaqqiq al-Bahrani in his Al-Hadaiq al-Nadira fi Ahkam al-Itra al-Atira, Itra al-Atira, or Itra al-Atira, is reported to have said that the third narrative is weak. Remember, the third narrative was the one in which it was very close to what the Sunni narratives generally say, that the Quran was revealed in seven ahruf, and it actually has a ring very close to what has been reported in the Sunni tradition. Muhaqqiq al-Bahrani also says that this narrative is similar to what is found in the tradition of the Al-Amma, which of course to them are the Sunni, and should be regarded as a case of taqiyya. And he also says that this should be regarded as a case of taqiyya, meaning that although they quote this narrative, but they do not own it. However, it can also be interpreted to imply, as per the opinion of Ibn al-Asir, the seven dialects of Arabia which are distributed in the Quran. So some portions of the Quran are in the dialect of the Quraysh, and some in that of Huzail, some in that of Hawazin, and some in that of Yemen. Again, that is something which he has posited furthermore. Al-Faiz al-Kashani also refers to this very interpretation of this narrative in his Tafsir al-Safi. So this is a summary, viewers, in a nutshell, of the various authorities who present interpretations or views on these three representative narratives. I would like to now analyze the isnads of all these three narratives, and the first of them is being displayed before you. The first of them is suspect because it is not sure whether it was Muhammad ibn Abi Umair who reported from Abban or someone else. So because the words, as you would see, from the words from the text are, if you refer back to the very first narrative, it says an Zurara, the words are an ibn Abi Umair aw ghayri. So it's not known who the person is. So therefore, in the absence of this, or the fact that it has not been specified clearly that who the narrator is, this narrative cannot be relied upon. Now, as far as the second narrative is concerned, you can see that its chain of narration is also being displayed before you. This narrative is unreliable because it has Muhammad ibn Yahya as-Sarafi, who is majhul. And this is what has been posited by Muhammad al-Jawahiri in his Mu'jam al-Rijal al-Hadith and by various other Rijal authorities. And when I speak of these Rijal authorities, I'm referring to the Shiite Rijal books. Now, according to Al-Khui, Muhammad ibn Yahya al-Sayrafi is ghair mu'assaq. And Imam Khui has actually given this opinion or mentioned this opinion in his Kitab al-Hajj. Now, as far as the third narrative is concerned, viewers, its narrative is also, its chain of narration is also being displayed before you. In the opinion of Majlisi, this is Mullah Baqir al-Majlisi, he in his Bihar al-Anwar says that this narrative is za'if and contradictory to many others. Now, about Abu Ahmad ibn Halal al-Ibarthai, as you can see that his name is being indicated by an arrow, Ibn al-Ghazali says that he would not derive any ruling from his narratives except what he narrates from Al-Hasan ibn Mahbub and Ibn Abi Umair. In the opinion of Allama Hilli, As-Sayyid and As-Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum, he is zarif. According to Sayyid Ali al-Barujardi, he is ghaliyan muttahiman fi dinihi. And this he has recorded in his Tharaif al-Maqal. And Najashi says that he is Salih al-Hadith, Yuruf minha wa yunkar. And this he has stated in his Rijal. Imam Khui has recorded the following about him with reference to the various books of Sheikh Abu Ja'far al-Tusi. Imam Abu Ja'far al-Tusi has recorded these in his various books. So Imam Khui in his Mu'jam al-Rijal al-Hadith has said that his opinions are Khaliyan Muttahiman fi dinihi, and this has been recorded in his Idda al-Usul. Then also it is also said that Mashhurun bil-Ghulu wal-La'na وَمَا يَخْتَصُّ بِرِوَايَاتِهِ لَا نَعْمَلْ عَلَيْهِ, which means has been recorded by Tahzib al-Ahkam. Then in Al-Istibsar, one of his other famous treatises, it is said Za'ifun Fasidul Mazhab La Yultafatu ila hadisi fima yakhtassu ila hadisihi fima yakhtassu binaqli, that it should not, as far as the fact is concerned that he is reporting some money in which he is a sole narrator, then he should not be relied upon and it should not be attended to. Al-Khui, after analyzing the jar of the authorities, regards Ahmad ibn Halal to be Sikha and says that at the most he may be regarded to be Fasidul Aqidah, which does not damage the veracity of his narrative. So this is how Imam Khui has actually concluded, which may or may not be correct, but the fact is the initial, all the earlier authorities have actually impugned him. So viewers, this is as far as the critique is concerned by our authorities, by Shiite authorities on the three basic narratives which I have already presented before you. We have seen how the text, how the chain of narration of this narrative has been regarded by the Rijal authorities of Shiite themselves. Now, as far as the conclusion that I would draw in this regard, I would say that Shiites are almost unanimous in regarding the following narratives to be the ones which depict the reality in their view. And for example, Imam Khui in his Al-Bayan, Al-Faiz Kashani in his Tafsir al-Safi, Al-Shaykh al-Jawahiri in his Jawahir al-Kalam, Al-Muhaqqiq al-Bahrani in his Al-Hadaiq al-Nazira, and Raza Hamadani in his Misbah al-Faqih. They are almost all of them are unanimous in saying that the view in this particular, on this particular topic is the one which has been depicted by the following narrative, which I am now just going to quote. And this narrative is by Imam Abu Ja'far. And it says, An Abi Ja'far alayhi salam, قال إن القرآن واحد نزل من عند واحد ولكن الاختلاف يجي من قبل الرواة. It says, Abu Ja'far said, indeed the Quran is one and is revealed by one, but the variations are due to its narrators. And this has been recorded in Abu Ja'far al-Kulayni's Al-Usul min al-Kafi, besides some of the other books. Another narrative which is quoted in this regard is recorded by Al-Kulayni in his Al-Usul min al-Kafi, and this narrative says that Al-Fuzail ibn Yasar قال قلت عن فزال ibn Yasar قال قلت لأبي عبد الله إن الناس يقولون إن القرآن نزل على سبعة أحرف فقال كذبوا أعداء الله ولكنه نزل على حرف واحد من عند الواحد. Al-Fuzail ibn Yasar said, I told Abu Abdullah that people say the Quran has been revealed on 7 ahruf. He replied, The enemies of God have told a lie. In fact, the Quran has been revealed on one harf from the one. So, in all, we can clearly see that there is a strong negation by Shiite authorities of the Seven Ahruf narrative, and the view that they subscribe to is that the Quran was revealed on one harf by one, which of course means by the Almighty. And since the Almighty is one and only, so therefore He revealed the Quran on one harf. And there's no question of the Quran being revealed on seven ahruf. We have already seen how Imam Khui has criticized this narrative, but a narrative of Seven Ahruf. So we can clearly see that as far as the Shiites are concerned, they do not accept the Seven Ahruf narrative, and they think that has been fabricated or this is against other sound narratives. And the sound narrative which they believe in is the one that the Quran has been revealed on one harf. Viewers, I will now go on to the final subtopic of this major topic that we have been discussing, and after that, inshallah, I'll close this discussion before we move on to the next discussion or the next topic. And that is that I'm going to enumerate some of the secondary views on the Seven Ahruf narrative, and this I'll first be taking from Al-Itqan. So besides the interpretations which we have already discussed, the seven famous ones or the seven primary ones, following are some of the other interpretations which Suyuti has also enlisted. Now I'm going to refer to some of them. So he says that it refers to the fact that an expression can be read up to 7 ways, read in up to 7 ways, and not in exactly the 7 ways. This thus also answers the objection raised that there are only a few expressions which can be read in 7 ways. However, there is another objection which has been raised on this view. There are expressions which can be read in more than 7 ways. The second of them, recorded by him, is that according to Ash-Shayzala, the jurists say that the 7 ahruf mean the absolute verses and the conditional ones. So al-mutlaq, al-muqayyad, that's what the Arabic words are. And the general ones and the specific ones, which means al-am wal-khas. And the explicit ones and the allegorical ones, al-nas wal-al-mu'awwal. The abrogating ones and the abrogated ones, al-nasikh wal-mansukh. And the concise ones and the detailed ones, al-mujwal wal-mufassar are the Arabic word. And verses which contain exception and its various types, which are al-istisna wa aqsamuhu. So again, this is an explanation of the 7 ahruf, implying the fact that it refers to various types of verses, and you can clearly see that the types referred to will exceed the number 7. The third interpretation that Suyuti is recorded is according to the opinion of the lexicographers. The 7 ahruf refer to suppression and superfluous letters, al-hasf wal-sila, pre-locating a verse or post-locating it, taqdeem wa ta'khir, metaphors, isti'ara, the Arabic word, repetition or at-takrar, literal verses and figurative ones, al-kanaya wal-haqiqa wal-majaz, concise verses and detailed ones, which are al-mujmal wal-mufassir, the apparent ones and the little known, az-zahir wal-gharib. This is another opinion. The fourth opinion that he has cited is the opinion of the grammarians, and that is the 7 ahruf refer to the masculine gender and the feminine gender, at-tazkir wa tanis. The conditional statements and complements of conditional statements, ash-shart wal-jaza, inflections and deflections, which is at-tasrif wal-i'rab, oaths and complements of oaths, which is al-aqsam wa jawabuha, plural and singular, which is al-jama wal-ifrad, diminutive nouns and revered nouns, at-tasghir wa-ta'zim, and variations in particles, which is al-ikhtilaf al-adwat. The fifth interpretation which Imam Suyuti has cited is that according to the interpretation of the Sufis, so this is his the citation regarding the opinions of the Sufis, the 7 ahruf refers to 7 ways of dealings and behavior like asceticism and contentment, and with certain faith and conviction in God, az-zuhud wal-qana'a wal-jazm wal-yaqeen. Service with regard and respect, al-khidma mal-haya wal-karam. Meditation with fear and hope, which is al-muraqaba ma'al-khawf wal-raja. Pleading and seeking forgiveness while remaining content and grateful, and this is at-tadarru wal-istighfar ma'al-raza wal-shukr. Patience with accountability and love, which is as-sabr ma'al muhasaba wal muhabba. And then we have attention with observation, which is ash-shawq ma'al mushahada. So this is again, you can see that the enumeration that is being done is primarily of various types of things which each group believes. The grammarians have their own, the lexicographers have their own, the Sufis have their own, but they all refer to 7 different phenomena or 7 different things or 7 different connotations which refer to particular concepts which exist in the specialities or specialization of all these 3 people. The 6th one that he refers to is that it refers to 7 disciplines of knowledge, and then he enumerates them, and they are the discipline of creation, the discipline of monotheism and regarding the Almighty being devoid of bad attributes, the discipline of the description of actions of the Almighty, the discipline of forgiveness and giving punishment, the discipline of accountability on the Day of Judgment, and the discipline of prophethood. So these are the 6 interpretations that he has cited besides the ones that we have already discussed. Now, Imam Suyuti goes on to quote some further interpretations of this narrative as well, and these he refers to Ibn Habban, and he says that these are the views of actually Ibn Habban, and he has actually recorded 35 of these interpretations while referring them to Ibn Habban. Again, I'm just going to cite them and not going to criticize them because the weakness is very obvious, as was the case with the previous ones. So the first one is Zajrun wa Amrun wa Halalun wa Haramun wa Muhkamun wa Mutashabihun wa Amsalun, which means verses of rebuke, verses of command, verses of what is allowed, verses of what is prohibited, the explicit ones and the allegorical ones, and the verses which mention parables. As you can see, again, we are discussing various types of verses. Then the next one is Halalun wa Haramun wa Amrun wa Nahyun wa Zajrun wa Khabrun ma huwa kainun ba'd wa Amsal. Again, verses of what is allowed, verses of what is prohibited, verses which command, verses which forbid, verses which forbid, verses which rebuke, verses which have information of what's going to happen, and verses which mention parables. The third one that he has cited and obviously attributed to Ibn Habban is وَوَعْدٌ وَوَعِيدٌ وَحَلَالٌ وَحَرَامٌ وَمَوَازِرٌ وَأَمْثَالٌ وَإِحْتِجَاجٌ. Verses of promise, threat, prohibition, allowance, advice, parables, and argumentation. As you can see, viewers, the pattern is exactly the same, that basically the 7 ahruf here are being treated as being consisting of actually 7 different types of Quranic verses. And the obvious critique I would say is that none of this is corroborated. All of this is conjecture, and it does not have any argument that on the basis of which we can deduce that these are the 7 verses which a particular authority is referring to. And the fourth one, viewers, is Amrun wa Nahyun wa Basharatun wa Nazaratun wa Akhbarun wa Amsalun, which would mean verses of command, prohibition, glad tidings, admonition, news, and parables. And viewers, you can also see another phenomena in some of these interpretations, is that some of them don't even count to 7. Obviously, if the 7 refers to 7 types of verses, then at least it should have a 7 types of verses. There are many interpretations, as is the case with this one, the fourth one. This actually refers to only 6 types of verses. And this phenomenon, as I said, that you can see in some of the other ones as well. The fifth one is Muhkaman wa Mutashabihun wa Nasikhun wa Mansukhun wa Khususun wa Umumun wa Qasasun, which means the clear verses, the allegorical ones, the abrogating ones, the abrogated ones, the specific ones, the general ones, and the anecdote verses. The sixth is Amrun wa Zajrun wa Targhibun wa Tarhibun wa Jadalun wa Qasasun wa Masalun, which means verses of command, rebuke, exhortation, intimidation, argumentation, anecdotes, and parables. The seventh, viewers, is Amrun wa Nahyun wa Haddun wa Ilmun wa Sirrun wa Zahrun wa Batan. Verses of command, forbiddance, definition, facts, secrets, and verses having an apparent meaning and verses having a hidden meaning. And then the eighth one, the eighth interpretation attributed to Ibn Habban is Nasikhun wa Mansukhun wa Wa'dun wa Wa'idun wa Raghmun wa Ta'dibun wa Inzarun. Abrogating, abrogated, promise, threat, intimidating, punishment, and admonition verses. Again, they are all referring to the types of verses. The ninth interpretation in this regard is Halalun wa Haramun wa Iftitahun wa Akhbarun wa Fazailu wa Uqubatun. So verses of allowance, prohibition, verses placed at the beginning, verses of information, verses of blessings, and verses of punishments. The 10th is Awamirun wa Zawajirun wa Amsalun wa Amba'un wa Atabun wa Wa'azun wa Qasasun. So verses of commands, threats, parables, news, reproof, advice, and anecdotes. The 11th interpretation, or the 11th, the one that he has cited is, of course, referring to or ascribing it to Ibn Hibban, is halalun wa haramun wa amsalun wa mansusun wa qasasun wa ibahatun, which would mean verses mentioning what is allowed, verses mentioning what is prohibited, verses which mention parables, explicit verses, anecdote verses, and verses which give permission. The 12th one in this regard is zahrun wa batrun wa farzun wa nadbun wa khususun wa umumun wa amsalun, which mean verses which have an apparent meaning, verses which have a hidden meaning, verses which express the desirable, the specific verses, the general ones, and verses mentioning parables. The 13th one is amrun wa nahyun wa wa'dun wa wa'idun wa ibahatun wa irshadun wa i'tibarun, which means verses of command, prohibition, promise, threat, permission, guidance, and verses which teach a lesson. The 14th one is muqaddamun wa muakharun wa faraiz wa hudud wa mawaiz wa mutashabih wa amsal. So this would mean verses which precede, verses which succeed, verses which state obligations, verses which state the bounds, verses of advice, the allegorical verses, and verses containing parables. The 15th one. So it's mufassarun wa mujmalun wa maqziyun wa nadbun wa hatmun wa amsal, which would mean detailed verses, the concise ones, the ones which mention decisions, those which mention what is desirable, those which mention obligations, and verses mentioning parables. This is what the 15th one. The 16th one is amru hatmin wa amru nadbin wa nahyu hatmin wa nahyu nadbin wa akhbarun wa ibahat. Verses which mention commands which are obligatory, verses which mention commands which are desirable to be followed, verses which mention prohibitions which shall necessarily be abstained from, verses which mention prohibitions from which abstention is desirable, and verses of information and verses of permission. Now, as far as the 17th interpretation is concerned, it is amru farzin wa nahyu hatmin wa amru nadbin wa nahyu murshidin wa wa'dun wa wa'idun wa qassun. So verses mentioning obligatory commands, verses of prohibition which must be followed, verses of command following which is desirable, verses of prohibition following which is desirable, verses of promise, verses of threat, and verses of anecdotes. The 18th viewers in this regard is sab'u jihad la yata'addah al-kalam lafzun khas urida bihal khas wa lafzul am urida bihil am wa lafzu am urida bihil khas wa lafzu khas urida bihil am wa lafzun yastaghni bitanzilihi an ta'wilihi wa lafzin ولفظ لا يعلم فقهه إلا العلماء لا يعلم فقهه إلا العلماء واللفظ لا يعلم معناه إلا الراسخون. So 7 aspects which a discourse does not exceed, and these 7 aspects are a specific word which implies something specific, a general word which implies a general thing, a general word which implies something specific, a specific word which implies a general, a word which, because of the way in which it has been revealed, does not require explanation, a word which is understood only by the scholars, and a word whose meanings only the righteous know. This is the 18th explanation or interpretation. The 19th one, viewers, is izhar rububiyya wa isbatul wahdaniya wa ta'zimul uluhiyya wa ta'abbud lillah wa mujanabatul ishraq wa targhib wa fi as-sawab wa tarhib min al-iqab. Again, these are the types of verses that are being enlisted. So verses which express providence, verses which prove the oneness of God, verses which depict honoring the divine, verses which express the worship of God, verses which express abstention from polytheism, verses which urge people to obtain reward, and which scare them of punishment. The 20th one verse is Sabul Lughat minha khams min hawazin wasnatan lisa'ir al-Arab. The 7 dialects, out of which 5 belong to the Hawazin and 2 to the rest of the Arab tribes. Again, it's in such an arbitrary explanation that has been given, and I don't think that even a critique is needed or is to tell how baseless or unfounded these opinions are. The 21st opinion views in this regard is Sabu Lughat mutafarriqa li jamil Arab kullu harfin minha li qabilatin mashhura. So the 7 dialects spread all over in Arabia, and to each famous tribe belonged a harf. So as you can see, as we progress along these interpretations, the initial interpretation, they actually refer to various types of Quranic verses, and these types varied from one to the other. And now we come to another category of interpretations in which it is said that the seven Ahruf refer to seven dialects of Arabia, and then these dialects are enumerated. The 22nd interpretation word is Sabu Lughat, Arbaun li'ajuz, Al-Ajuz Hawazin, Saad ibn Bakr, wa Jashm ibn Bakr, wa Nasr ibn Muawiyah, wa Salas li Quraysh. The seven dialects, and four refer to the Ajuz Hawazin from among Saad ibn Bakr and Jashm ibn Bakr and Nasr ibn Muawiyah, and three dialects belonging to the Quraysh. Again, we are discussing the interpretation of the seven Ahruf. As I said, the initial interpretations refer to various types of verses, and now we are discussing that category of interpretations which refers to seven dialects, and then these dialects are arbitrarily assumed by some authorities without even naming the sources and grounds of their opinion. The 23rd one uses Sabu Lughat, Lughatu Quraysh, wa Lughatu Quraysh, wa Lughatun lil Yaman, wa Lughatun lil Jurham, wa Lughatun li Hawazin, wa Lughatun li Quza'a, wa Lugha li Thamim, wa Lugha li Tay. The seven dialects, and they are that of the Quraysh, that of Yaman, that of Jurham, that of Hawazin, that of Quza'a, that of Thamim, and that of Tay. The 24th interpretation is Lughatul Qa'bain, Ka'b ibn Amr, Ka'b ibn Luway, wa lahuma Sabu Lughat. The dialects of the two Ka'bs, Ka'b ibn Amr and Ka'b ibn Luway, both had seven dialects in all. The 25th interpretation of yours is Al-Lughat Al-Mukhtalifa li-Ahya al-Arab fi ma'na wahid, mislu halumma wa hat wa ta'al wa aqbil. So various dialects of the tribes of Arabia having the same meaning where they differ. For example, halumma wa hat wa ta'ala wa aqbil. So viewers, now this we are referring to a third category of interpretation in which synonymous words are being presented. So you can see the reflection of those views that we have already discussed. That the first category describes the types of verses. The second category describes the dialects, ascribing various dialects to various tribes. And now we come to the third, in which synonymous words are being implied as the reference or the connotation of the seven Ahruf. And these, as I said, are actually various categories of interpretation. The 26th in this regard is Sabu Qira'at li Sab'atin min as-Sahaba, Abi Bakr wa Umar wa Usman wa Ali wa Ibn Masud wa Ibn Abbas wa Ubay ibn Ka'b radiyallahu anhum. So now this is a fourth type which is being presented. And actually it says that the seven readings of the seven famous companions of the Prophet, and then it enumerates those companions as Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, Ali ibn Masud, Ibn Abbas, and Ubay ibn Ka'b radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een. Now, here's the 27th interpretation. This is Hamzun wa Imaratun wa Fathun wa Kasrun wa Takhfim wa Maddun wa Kasr. So now again, this is still another category, and this actually refers to the various pronunciations, various ways of pronunciations, and perhaps accent as well. So this is Hamz, Imala, Fath, Kasr, Tafkhim, Mad, and Kasr. The 28th interpretation is Tasrifun wa Masadir wa Uruz وغريب والسجع واللغات مختلفة كلها في شيء واحد, which means the inflections, the verbal nouns, the prosody, the uncommon, the rhyme prose, and the various dialects having the same meaning. And in the 29th place we have كلمة واحدة تعرب بسبعة أوجه حتى يكون المعنى واحد وإن اختلف اللفظ فيه. So a single expression which can be declined in seven ways so that the meanings always remain the same, even if the words of the expressions are different. Again, you can see a reverberation of this interpretation being found earlier as well, that actually this is seven ways of reading an expression in which the meaning does not change. The 30th explanation that has been offered is Ummahatul Hija, and these are Alif, Wal-Ba, Wal-Jim, Wal-Dal, Wal-Ra, Wal-Sin, Wal-Ain, لأن عليها تدور جوامع كلام العرب. This is still another category of interpretation in which it says that the basic letters of the alphabet, like Alif, Ba, Jim, Dal, Ra, Sin, and Ain, they are the ones which are implied by these seven Ahruf. And these are the letters. And it says because on these letters revolve all Arabic discourses and writings. The 31st interpretation words is أنها في أسماء الرب Mislul Ghafur, Ghafur Ar-Rahim, As-Sami, Al-Basir, Al-Alim, Al-Hakim. And still another category in which actually 7 Ahruf is referring to 7 attributes of the Almighty, or the 7 names of the Almighty. And they are the names of God, like the forgiving, the merciful, one who hears all, one who sees all, one who knows all, and the wise. All these are actually translations of the names of the Almighty. The 32nd interpretation, viewers, of Ibn Hibban that has been cited by Suyuti is Hiya ayatun fi sifat zat, ayatun tafsiruha fi ayatin ukhra, wa ayatun bayanuha fi sunnah sahiyya, wa ayatun fi qissat al-anbiya wa rusul, wa ayatun fi khalq al-ashya, wa ayatun fi wasf al-jannah, wa ayatun fi wasf al-nar. So again, we come back to the types of the Quranic verses. So we started with that, we are coming to an end with that. And again, it says that it refers to types of Quranic verses. And then, as I said, these have been enumerated, and I would just give a translation, and that is, there are verses which have the attributes of the Almighty, verses which are explained by other verses, verses which are explained by the true Sunnah, verses which contain the tales and anecdotes of the prophets and the messengers, verses which depict creation, verses which describe paradise, and verses which describe hell. Now we come to the 33rd explanation, viewers, and that is ayatun fi wasfis sa'ni wa ayatun fi isbatil wahdaniya lahu wa ayatun fi isbatis sifatihi wa ayatun fi isbati rusulihi wa ayatun fi isbati kutubihi wa ayatun fi isbatis islam wa ayatun fi nafil kufr. Which means verses which describe the Creator, verses which prove His singularity, verses which prove His attributes, verses which prove His messengers, and verses which prove His books, and verses which prove Islam, and verses which negate disbelief. The 34th interpretation in this regard is Sabu Jihad min sifat zatillah allati la yaqaw alayha takyif, which means the 7 aspects from the attributes of God which do not depict His state. And finally, viewers, the 35th interpretation in this regard is Al-Iman Billah wal Mubayinatu Shirk wa Isbatul Awamir wa Mujanabatu Zawajir wa Sabat al-Iman wa Tahrim ma harram Allah wa Ta'atu Rasulihi. So that is belief in God, polytheism, being far apart from belief in one God, proving commands, abstaining from what people have been threatened with, perseverance on faith, to consider as prohibited whatever is prohibited by God, and to obey His messenger. So viewers, this brings us to the end of these 35 interpretations, besides the 6 others which Suyuti earlier cited. And as you can see, that all of them, either they refer to types of the Quranic verses, or to the dialects, or to the various interpretations of the doctors or scholars of a particular field, like grammarians and lexicographers and Sufis, or it refers to the 7 different ways of pronouncing a word, etc., etc. So all these interpretation viewers, you can see that none of them have been corroborated. They have been just presented as views, and I don't think that any critique is even required to dismiss them. I have enumerated them for the sake of the explaining the fact that how diversely this narrative has been interpreted, and how differently and how in such a different manner that these interpretations have been offered, that one really finds it hard to believe what the narrative actually means. So viewers, if I sum up my discussion on the 7 Ahruf narrative, I can conclude, in my humble opinion, that as far as the content of this narrative is concerned, we have discussed the major interpretations. None of them satisfies our intellect, at least my intellect. I think there are a number of questions which arise on each of the 7 major interpretations, which I earlier put forth before you, not only by my own self, but by critiques by major authorities who would dismiss one interpretation or the other. And as far as the secondary interpretations which I have today enumerated before you, they also carry very, very little. In fact, they are even more unconvincing than those 7 major interpretations. We have also seen some of the chains of narrations of these narratives. We have discussed the mawquf narratives and as well as the marfu ones, besides some of the other narratives which describe or help us in interpreting the 7 Ahruf narratives. None of these narratives have been found to be of any convincing nature as far as the chain of narration is concerned. We have also discussed the Shiite interpretation of this narrative. They, in fact, are of the view that, contrary to the Sunni tradition or the Amma, the Seven Ahruf narrative is totally unfounded. To them, the Quran has actually been revealed on one harf. So, all in all, I would say that the Seven Ahruf narrative neither is any text of the narrative does have any convincing explanation. In fact, a number of questions arise on each of its interpretations, but also its chain of narration is also not reliable. So therefore, my own simple conclusion is that the Seven Ahruf narratives is not worthy of being accepted, neither on the basis of its content or interpretation, nor on the basis of its chain of narration, and it should stand rejected. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.